biodiversity conservation is the answer to food security. Rice is one of the most water-taking, consuming species. So now the government and also the citizens are looking at reviving another staple diet, which is using millets. And millets may actually be the answer to our water problems. And tomorrow our agricultural produce and food security may come in by using these species, which are not as water consuming as rice or even wheat. So the entire FAO, I think it's called, the UN division that looks at food security, they are concentrating on millets. So there again, a big role was played by the seeds that were conserved by regular citizens in India, who have conserved these different types of millets. And I would say that biodiversity conservation is the answer for the food security too. Every day when we look at the news, we look at it through an economics perspective. But if you look at it from this conservation of the biodiversity aspect, you will see all the answers there. If tomorrow Africa is the answer for our food chain, then automatically their future is sort of safeguarded.
We have Shmuel. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. A very interesting presentation. And I want to ask you a question. How conservation biodiversity can support improvement food security in the world?
Yes. All right. So today we just spoke about biodiversity conservation as a whole, but there is a complete different stream where people are focusing on agriculture and biodiversity conservation. So for example, in India, our staple diet in the south especially is rice. And recently now we're reviving all our old food species, which are millets. In Telugu, we call it as ragi and jonna and others, which was our staple diet that our ancestors and even my parents had as a regular meal, but we forgot about them. And those species, when they were grown as agriculture produce, consumed much less water than we do today with rice. Rice is one of the most water-taking, consuming species. So now the government and also the citizens are looking at reviving another staple diet, which is using millets. And millets may actually be the answer to our water problems. And tomorrow our agricultural produce and food security may come in by using these species, which are not as water consuming as rice or even wheat. So the entire FAO, I think it's called, the UN division that looks at food security, they are concentrating on millets. So there again, a big role was played by the seeds that were conserved by regular citizens in India, who have conserved these different types of millets. And I would say that biodiversity conservation is the answer for the food security too. And this is one part of it. The second one is Singapore recently said that the protein consumption in their country can be through insects, and they've approved it. And so there is a lot of work that is going on in seeing which insects that, when produced economically, can become a part of their food, everyday food. And so again, it's some insects which may have lost could have been a good protein source, and now we're again trying to sort of make sure that those are conserved. So there are different answers to this. Same ditto with seafood algae that we are putting now to use, not just for human consumption food chains, but also for the animal husbandry industry, where there is a lot of protein intake. So again, there are different types of algae have been conserved by a few of the citizens. This was, and so again, it's a spread of answers, but short answer is yes. Biodiversity conservation is the answer to food security.
Okay, I have a second question. This said that biodiversity can support improvement social and economic well-being in poor countries of Africa and Latin America.
Yes, for sure. Again, the answer lies in how we conserve, and my short answer would be yes. There is no other way. We every day when we look at the news, we look at it through an economics perspective. But if you look at it through from this conservation of the biodiversity aspect, you will see all the answers there. If tomorrow Africa is the answer for our food chain, then automatically their future is sort of safeguarded. So again, short answer is yes. Biodiversity conservation is the answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So we have gifts from Forest. Sir, you can please unmute and ask your question.
How
Yes.
to create forests in different places. So as of we have a startup, like हमने अभी एक नया startup run किया है, Gifts from Forest. So what we do is celebrate people's birthday who plant trees around the world. So we are connected to few NGOs and few people. We have just started 2 months back, and we are from Pune starting out. So we want to create forests, just like you mentioned, like 400 acres are there. So we want to connect people, and our main vision is to pave a path towards like जहाँ पे nature and humans again unite. It feels really connecting to you. So my question है कि किस तरह से हम अलग-अलग जगह ये land को process कर सकते हैं?
So, and that's the reason I was saying that private participation is very important. India as a whole, if you look at it, the government also has some commitments to the global forum. It is called Nationally Determined Contributors, so they're called NDCs, where we have to show that our afforestation has increased by X percentage. And this is a commitment that every country is making as a part of the UN. There is a Paris Agreement and Conference of Parties which happens regularly. So as a part to that, India has committed to it. So we need to touch an X percentage. I will not go into the statistics, but what has happened is the government from its perspective and side can only do so much. Whatever is there, they can protect. They can't take away private lands and say, okay, we're going to make a forest. It is up to the private citizens and, like I was sharing, industries and people who are philanthropists to come forward and say, okay, we're going to protect and do whether you call it growing afforestation or. And I would request you to move away from just planting trees to look at it from a composite view, where you conserve the biodiversity of that given area. So private participation, I feel, is the answer. Government is doing its bit because they've committed to it, and they are trying to protect as many areas as possible. UNDP has something called as Other Effective Conservation Measures. It's called OECM, and they're trying to encourage private parties to sort of come forward and conserve. Industries have green belts. What can we ask them to do more? For example, mining companies today, before they start mining, they have to commit to restore the land again once the mining project is over. So a lot of things that government has put into place, not just in India but across the globe. But they can only do that much. And given our population, you cannot go and say, okay, private parties give it away. It is up to the I would hate to say this, but the richer citizens to sort of commit to this. And that's why these programs like this, where we are sharing why this is so important, will move the needle. And like you committed, like you said, that you yourself are working, which means that there is a lot of awareness in the youngsters too. So
yes,
actually you are the answer to the question. What you are doing is the answer to your first question. We need more people like
Yes, thank you.
So we have a question from Mr. Adi. Can you please tell me what is the effective measure to conserve nature with respect to population growth?
Okay. I wish I had a single line and one bullet answer for that. The answer is we are still figuring it out. See, we can't stop the population from consuming. That includes me and you. How do you sort of ensure that human population, the way it is growing versus the conservation? It's a question of balance. And that answer, there is no answer to balance. How do you reach that right balance? You'll only know when you reach it. So there is no single answer. But there are some scientists who believe that Earth can surely take care of many more human beings than there are on Earth today. And then there are another set of scientists who say that we've reached our peak point. So there is a mixed conversation going on, but it all boils down to how much is each human being sort of consuming, right? And that is growing very, very fast. If that is not curtailed, then even if the population reduces a little bit or really explodes, it all comes back to our consumption patterns, which there is no sign of slowing down. I mean, if we all ask ourselves, we will not give up our convenience and comfort to just say, okay, I'm consuming less. We've crossed that threshold. So maybe science will give us some answers to the CCUS that's Harish Garu was referring to. We may find solutions, or something like COVID comes back in a different form and then we're forced to do it. Earth, like I said, Earth will take care of itself. Whether we're a party to it or not, we don't know.
So we have another question from Mr. Incredible Traveler. That's what he named himself. I'm from Shimla. How can I start climate change program? I have done my graduation in BSc degree in zoology, botany, chemistry. Now I am doing masters in journalism and mass communication in Himachal Pradesh. So how can I start climate change program is his question.
See, I think a few years ago I was at the same point as him. And one thing that really helps is most of this information, what even I've shared today, is all available on internet. And it's a boon in that way where you can read up, look at a lot of practices that are going on and join one of those non-profits or even a private party that is already doing it, learn along the way, and then you will figure your own path. But the starting point is always learning. And for that, there is publicly available information almost, there is too much of it actually now. So it's a question of focus. So I would request you to read up and then look up for either startups or youngsters who are dealing with this already and join them. And it will give you a flavor of what can be done.
And there's a question from Dr. Usha. There is this dangerous trend of nurturing pets, especially cats and dogs, which in long run may affect the populations of these pets, especially exotic varieties. What do you think about it?
I'm also a pet owner, a pet mom. As a mom, I would say this question upsets me quite a bit. But again, I request you all to read this book. It is called Homo Sapiens by, I think it's Yuval. I hope I'm getting his name right. So if there was ever an alien coming to Earth, right, we all assume that they'll reach out to human beings. We are very smug in our understanding of ourselves. We think we are the kings and the queens of this place, the entire Earth. And so we believe they'll come and connect with us. There are scientists, and this book also, one of the things that he says is they may be actually connecting with the grasses. They may be connecting to the amount of animals that are there as livestock. Or they may be connecting to the dolphins in the sea. You don't know. So just that will give you a flavor of answer. The spread of species is very imbalanced and pets are a part of that. But if you look at it, pets also have evolved. For example, what scientists tell us about dogs is wolves started following human beings when they realized that wherever human beings are, they eat the flesh and they throw the bones and then they move on, when we were hunter-gatherers. And these wolves would go and get easy access to bones. That's how they started following us. And over a period of time, just like we've domesticated plants for our agriculture, these were also domesticated and they became the best friends. So there is a history to it. Overnight, nothing is going to change. But does it affect that species? No, those species are thriving at the expense of other species. So they've learned the art of survival. They're more resilient than most other species. That's where they are where they are. And then the species that has understood this the best, as per scientists, are the cows and the buffaloes, that we grow as livestock. They're pampered, they're fed every day, and they're taken care of. So species evolution is the one that we're looking at. Then they're actually thriving. We don't need to be worried about them. But there are other species that are falling apart because of that. That is questionable.